Hey, soccer fans, welcome back to the Feed the Fire podcast. I am your host, Nick. It's episode 64. And please, someone, tell me this is a joke. Tell me the Chicago Fire hiring Frank Klopas as their manager, as their head coach, is a joke. Sadly, I really don't think it is. And it's something, unfortunately, I've kind of been expecting since the end of the season and since he was named interim manager after Ezra Hendrickson's firing. In this episode, I'm going to give you all my reactions to the Chicago Fire's moving backwards as a franchise, and you'll get my candid takes on the announcement. We'll break it down, and we'll see if there's any silver lining here. So stay tuned. Hey, MLS and Chicago Fire fans. Once again, Nick here with the Feed the Fire podcast. And yes, you heard me correctly before the intro music. The Chicago Fire announced today, December 5th, that Frank Klopas has been hired as the manager, as the head coach of the Chicago Fire. This is his now fourth stint as manager. Couple interim stints, a couple actual head coaching appointments, hirings. But yeah, Frank Klopas is back, and it was announced today. I felt like this was coming. When there weren't really many rumors or anything other than Klopas is one of the finalists. And I just had the feeling that the Chicago Fire were going to announce this because it's really unpopular. And they were going to wait till the week of MLS Cup to do it. And they announced it today's Tuesday. And I think a lot of the MLS Cup media stuff starts tomorrow and definitely on Thursday, getting ready for the matchup. And so it was right out of the PR playbook, right? Like, it's bad news. Everyone knows it's going to be bad news, but you did it anyway. And so they got to try and announce it at a time to have the least amount of noticeability and impact. Noticeability, that might be a new word I just made up. So, they kind of did it with the Heights and Pelzer extensions as well, kind of sneaking it in right before the was it the conference finals or the conference semifinal matchups, and they did it again. They did it again in announcing this in the most underwhelming of fashions. And my initial thoughts on this was just confusion and curse words. Like, that's all that was going through my mind, was just, huh? What? Why? Huh? And then just, GD, son of a... But what? Seriously? Really? It was confusion and curse words as I'm scrolling through Twitter, as I'm reading the announcements from the club, reading the headlines from The Athletic and everyone reporting on it. Like, it was just terrible reaction. My other thought, this might be even worse than the Heights and Pelzer extensions. We know that Heights and Pelzer could not get the Fire over the top, but they've done a lot of other stuff that Joe Mansueto values within the organization. I disagree with them being retained in any shape or form and having an impact on this first team club. Put them on the business side of things. Let them do more organizational things, right? We've gone over that in episodes past. But these are kind of Joe's guys that he picked and put in place and sees value in what they're building. This hiring of Frank Klopas is literally moving backwards because you had already had him as a terrible coach in the past. They're moving backwards. For everyone who said Frank didn't do a bad job this season taking over for Ezra Hendrickson and that he's a victim of a bad roster, this is your fault. This is all your fault because Joe Mansueto must have heard you. My other initial reaction, the Fire don't care about winning, at least as long as they have Frank Klopas as a coach. I don't know if it was a 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, or how many year deal, but they don't care about winning as long as he's the head coach. And my other initial thought, how terrible were the other 11 candidates and the other 2 finalists that they ended up with Frank Klopas? Who else was out there? Supposedly there were other candidates who had MLS head coaching experience and European coaching experience. I think I even heard there was someone with Premier League experience or EFL, or not EFL, but championship experience, that they decided, you know what, Frank Klopas is the guy to help rebuild the Chicago Fire. Like that just tells you that they had already made this decision way back when in the middle of the season, especially when they brought in the other two Greek coaches to be assistants. Honestly, I thought that Kostanoglu was going to take over as the head coach, especially because you heard Frank in October say, I'm happy to be the assistant. I don't want to be the head coach. Apparently he changed his mind. And I don't know if any of his quotes are in the release we're going to read, but for him to all of a sudden say the best way for me to help this club is to become the head coach, yeah, doesn't make any sense. Let's go through this press release. I have seen the news, but I haven't read the press release word for word. So that's what I'm going to do right now in this show as we're recording it for the first time, and I'll give you my candid reactions here. So this was released at 9 o'clock this morning, Tuesday, December 5th, from Chicago Fire Communications. By the way, they could have gotten a better coach. Like Frank Klopas could not have taken a worse picture. Like it's just like him staring off into space. It's almost like a bad mugshot, but his hair's not as disheveled as I would expect someone who has recently been arrested to have. So they should definitely update some of his photographs that are on file there. All right. Anyway, here's the beginning of the press release. Chicago Fire FC today announced that it has hired Frank Klopas as head coach. Klopas, a member of the club's Ring of Fire and the Chicagoland Sports Hall of Fame, has been involved with the Chicago Fire and Major League Soccer in a variety of roles since 1998. Okay, historical context there. That's fine. Variety of roles is definitely an understatement. Quote, we conducted a thorough process with numerous well-qualified candidates, and we believe that Frank Klopas is the right person to lead the team, end quote, said Chicago Fire FC sporting director George Heitz. Wow, what an awful quote. That is the most, like, not only is it just executive speak and it's no substance, but it's just crap. I'll be honest. A thorough process with numerous well-qualified candidates. You're telling me that a coach who has a career 500 record in MLS was the most qualified out of the people that you were interviewing? That's not well-qualified candidates to me. And again, just the point that they hired him, clearly they already had their minds made up a long time ago. George Heitz continues. Frank is hardworking. I don't think anyone's doubted that. Has a strong relationship with our players and staff. That's not exactly true from my perspective. You heard everything about the locker room being dysfunctional. You could just look at CJ Brown and Zach Thornton like at the opposite end of the bench, having zero emotion or investment in the game other than the players they work with on a daily basis. Meanwhile, Frank and his Greek coaches are like moving magnets around on a whiteboard trying to come up with plays or some formation or whatever. They still couldn't figure out how to get Shaqiri and Gutierrez on the same page. Like, the fact that they're saying he has a strong relationship with their players and staff, hey, maybe, but they're not all positive. I think that's just an awful take. The quote goes on, and Frank knows what it takes to be successful in the league. He might, but he hasn't shown it. During the interview process, Frank laid out a clear plan to create a winning culture and mentality within the club, and we are all aligned on the areas that we need to strengthen to be much more competitive in 2024. We will work closely with Frank to improve the roster and finalize his coaching staff for the upcoming season. Okay, there's a lot to unpack in those last two sentences. Frank laid out a clear plan to create a winning culture and mentality within club. Frank, what the heck have you been doing since you took over for Ezra Hendrickson? What the heck have you been doing as an assistant coach or in one of those variety of roles since 1998? This is absolute garbage, and the fact that Heitz is trying to pawn this kind of crap off on the fan base is even worse. Frank has no idea what he's doing or how to, what's the quote here, have a clear plan for a winning culture and mentality. Nope. And we've heard it, rumors throughout. John Donovan has said it when he ran into Chris Rolfe not too long ago. Klopas will lose this locker room sooner rather than later. Here, we will work closely with Frank to improve the roster and finalize his coaching staff for the upcoming season. I guess that's Frank's idea to strengthen and be more competitive. Sign better players, because that way he doesn't have to coach as much. But Frank, guess what? assuming that Heights can. I'm not confident he can. I'm not confident any striker of DP caliber is going to want to come play in Chicago for Frank Klopas. But even then, Frank, you're not going to have excuses when you have actually a better roster than you have this season. Again, Heights probably is going to have a better roster because you can't get much worse than the way they performed this season, unless Shaqiri decides he's out. Oh, I'm hurt, and he pulls himself for the season eventually. Can't believe it. Continuing on with the announcement. The announcement marks Klopas' second stint as a full-time head coach of the club. Klopas has also served as an interim head coach on 3 occasions, including 2023 season where he led the team for the remaining 24 matches of the campaign. Yeah, you're not going to tell us how that went. Overall, Klopas has compiled a 49-43-29 regular season record as head coach of the Fire and currently holds the 3rd highest winning percentage in club history. 49 wins, 43 losses, 29 draws. And that's nothing to write home about. He's a 500 coach in MLS. I guess if the league wants parity, there you go. But there's plenty of other coaches who have winning records that were available. Gio Savarese, Bruce Arena, even though I wouldn't have agreed with that hiring. Oscar Pereira still doesn't have a contract with Orlando City, as far as I've heard. Go get these guys. As it's pointed out on Twitter time and time again, and in every kind of talking point ever, there's no salary cap on coaches. You can spend as much money as you want, billionaire Joe Mansueto, to hire a coach and to pay a coach. Heck, I'd rather overpay for a coach to overhaul this than overpay for a DP striker who's not going to make a huge difference in the standings. Also on that, Frank Klopas has the 3rd highest winning percentage in club history. 3rd highest winning percentage, and he's 6 wins above 500. That's terrible. 6 wins out of 121 based on that. It's terrible. Terrible. All right, after leading the team to the Lamar Hunt U.S. Open Cup final in 2011, thanks for pointing out something that happened 12 years ago as part of why he should be hired now. Klopas recorded his highest win total with the club in 2012, again, producing a 17-11-6 record as he guided the team to the MLS Cup playoffs. By the way, they lost in the knockout round to Houston in that one. His 17-win season in 2012 is ranked tied for the 3rd most regular season victories in a single season in club history. Thank goodness Chris Rolfe showed up during that transfer window, banged in 8 goals the second half of the season, and helped that out. Because, oh my gosh, they're hanging their hat on what he did 11 and 12 years ago. We get a quote from Frank now. Here we go. Quote, "I've never made it a secret how much I care for this wonderful club and city. Chicago is my home, and I would do anything to bring success to the Fire," said Klopas. Apparently, he would do anything except not coach. He continues, "At this time, I believe that stepping back onto the sidelines is where I can best help this club achieve its goals. I'm excited to build a strong culture and winning mentality within the team where everyone is committed to a standard of excellence and hard work." Gee, that sounds exactly like the line George Heights said. And again, I'll point out, Frank, what the heck have you been doing your entire time? You've been a part of this coaching staff. What's going to change now? Oh, now you're the head coach? You've been the de facto head coach. It's just frustrating, right? I can't believe that we're being peddled this crap. And again, Frank's delivering the same line as Heights. And I bet if there's other quotes in here from other people in the organization, it's going to say the exact same thing. And be on the lookout for this, Chicago Fire fans. Strong culture and winning mentality. Those are going to be the buzzwords for the next offseason. Frank continues, "I'm very grateful to Joe Mansueto and our technical staff for their trust." Doesn't name Heights or Pelzer. I would also like to thank our fans for their unwavering support, and I look forward to experiencing many positive moments together at Soldier Field next season. Well, that's great, Frank. I don't think you're going to have them, and you're certainly not going to see me there enjoying them in person. The article continues, "As a player, Klopas made more than 300 professional appearances for clubs in the U.S. and Greece, including 49 appearances for the Fire from 1998 to 99, and scored 81 goals during his club career. On the international stage, he scored 12 goals in 39 appearances for the U.S. men's national team from 1987 to 1995, representing the USMNT in the 88 Summer Olympics, the 94 World Cup, and the 95 Copa America." So, okay, they're giving you a little bit of his resume. I guess that's good article writing, give you a little bit of his background. But I certainly hope that's not there to make me feel better about this, because we've seen this on 4 occasions. None of it good. A Chicago soccer icon, Klopas originally joined the Fire ahead of the team's MLS expansion season in '98. While playing for his hometown team, Klopas helped lead the club to one of the most successful inaugural seasons in MLS history, as the Fire became the first team to win MLS Cup in its expansion campaign. Yeah, that's because of Klopas, not because of all the other stars that were on that team. Additionally, Klopas scored the game-winning goal in a 2-1 extra-time win over the Crew in the '98 Lamar Hunt U.S. Open Cup final to lead the Fire to the double after winning MLS Cup and the U.S. Open Cup in the same season. After concluding his playing career in '99, Klopas served, here's his coaching resume, as the Fire's assistant coach in 2000, technical director from 2008 to 2011, before becoming the 6th full-time head coach on November 3rd, 2011. In 2 full seasons at the helm, Klopas tallied a 31-win, 24-loss, 13-draw regular season record with the Fire before joining CF Montreal as the team's head coach, because he did so great, would do anything for his hometown team, was all these things, and then they canned him and he had to go find a job in Montreal. During his time with Montreal, Klopas led the club to a Canadian Championship title in 2014 and the final of the CONCACAF Champions League in 2014-15. In 2016, Klopas rejoined the Fire to become the club's broadcast color analyst from 2016 to 2019. Oh, God, I don't know if you guys remember Klopas doing color commentary, but you might as well just turn off the volume. There's nothing worth listening to there. Before returning to the coaching ranks as an assistant in 2020. Here's the thing. You want to point to Montreal's success under Klopas. Fine, it's a fair point. Look at his full resume. Again, you're still going back 8 and 9 years when Klopas has been in charge of the squad much more recently and not been able to get anything done. I haven't done the research on his time in Montreal, but again, winning the Canadian Championship in 2014, that pretty much consisted of just beating TFC, which they did on aggregate 2-1 in a home and home series there. So I wouldn't say that that's some major accomplishment. Yes, it is a trophy. No, what was it? Maybe like 4 games they had to play to get that, 2 series maybe. I don't know what the Canadian Championship structure was like 9 years ago. And the final of the CONCACAF Champions League in 2014-2015, that sticks out to me as a wild piece of trivia that Klopas was in charge of that Montreal squad. Because you always hear when people talk about MLS versus Liga MX and MLS and CONCACAF Champions League, you hear about that run from RSL. You hear about that run from Montreal, but nobody talks about Klopas in those conversations. It's always about the players that stepped up and made the plays. Never his coaching prowess. Maybe there was more going on in those locker rooms and behind the scenes that I'm giving him credit for, but still, if he was that good, why did he only coach not even 2 years in Montreal? Last sentence, Klopas currently holds a U.S. Soccer Pro license. I'm pretty sure they waived him in. Greeks in school, not the best combination. I'm pretty sure they waived him in after his playing career. And he is fluent in English and Greek, which is going to be great for all those South American guys they're going to sign, right? Anyway, those are my instant reactions to the press announcement, to a lot of the news. A few other thoughts that I had. Just this past season, 2023 season, the Chicago Fire fired Ezra Henriksen, and the kind of straw that broke the camel's back, the last straw there, was that 3-0 defeat to Nashville, where Ezra was feeling the pressure, went to a 3-man back line, changed up the formation, changed some of the starting lineups, and then got shellacked by Nashville. Frank Klopas did that twice during his time in 2023. Ezra Henriksen was criticized because he couldn't figure out how to get Brian Gutierrez and Xherdan Shaqiri playing together, either on the same page or just in a starting lineup. You had 2 center attacking mids there that seemed to want to do the same thing. And when they tried putting them on the wings, they were unproductive. Ezra couldn't figure it out. That was part of the reason he got canned. Could not figure out how to use his starting lineup, his best players. Neither could Klopas. And remember all that dysfunction? There was a lot of unnecessary red cards based on just the attitude and anger of the players on the pitch and the stupidity of their fouls. under Ezra. And there was even a point where Ezra Hendrickson was getting carded for screaming at officials walking on in the field, right? It became dysfunctional. Well, under Klopas, apparently, again, rumors here, it's not reported, and I doubt you'll ever hear an official report because, the players will at least keep it tight. But it was rumored that the locker room got divided at one point between guys who like Kamara and guys who like Shaqiri, or siding with them over whatever issue it was. And obviously, you can look at the coach sheets during the games when you have Thornton and Brown on one side and Frank and the Greeks on the other side. So all the things that Ezra Hendrickson got fired for, Frank Klopas did the exact same thing in 2023, and now he's named the head coach. If I'm Ezra, I'm pissed. I am pissed. And you know what? If I'm CJ Brown and Zach Thornton, I'm pissed. And if I'm all the players, I'm pissed too, because this is a guy who has shown he can't improve your squad, can't coach competently in the MLS anymore, if at all. And he just got rewarded with another contract. The only time this makes sense to me is if this is all short term. If Klopas and Mansueto and Heights are all in like a 1 or 2 year deal, and Mansueto realized he couldn't get anyone better than Heights and Pelzer at this time, and Heights and Pelzer realized they couldn't get anyone better than Klopas, at least in their mind, because I'm sure every one of those 11 candidates would be doing a better job than Frank Klopas today. That they just said, let's run it back for another year, and then when we're finally ready to go for it, we'll just revamp everything. That's the only way this makes sense to me. As a final thought on this, I am going to point out, because a lot of people are defending Frank Klopas, right? A lot of people are saying, well, he got stuck with a bad roster. He'd do anything for this club. First of all, his attitude towards the Chicago Fire should have no bearing on whether or not he's the head coach. And I just said whether or not, and I hate that because I never write it in any of my legal documents that way. Frank Klopas' dedication and love for the club should have no bearing on whether he's the head coach. There. I feel much better now saying that the right way. It should have no bearing on whether he's the head coach. He has not proven himself to be a good coach in Major League Soccer, period. End of discussion. They should have gone with someone else. Now, the other people who should be really pissed off about this is the league itself. Major League Soccer as a league, and we as soccer fans, just generally, not even just Fire fans, but we as soccer fans should be mad that the Chicago Fire are having to go back to Frank Klopas for, I forget now, 4 or 5 times, right? That there is not another coach out there that has been identified. I'm not going to completely rule out the idea of retreads here, because we have seen Caleb Porter go to Columbus and have success. We have seen Oscar Pareja go to Orlando City and have success. We have seen coaches move within MLS and have success. Typically, though, that is when they get their first head coaching job, maybe flounder a little bit or have some quick success and can never repeat it. And then they finally get their coaching chops under them. They realize they just need a new environment, right? Sometimes with the player, they just need a new environment. They're a good player. They can become a star, but it just wasn't working the way things wasn't working out the way things are going with their current club. They go on another club and succeed. Same thing with coaches. Here, the Chicago Fire have just retreaded a losing coach. I'm going to say it. He's a losing coach, despite his record being just barely above 500. He's a losing coach in Major League Soccer and has proven it over his last couple stints here. And again, we should be offended that there's nobody else being considered or getting these jobs, and they're just retreads. Whew, buddy. And again, as I have said always, the people who've constantly defended him, there's one. I'm willing to say this confidently. I haven't researched the employment statistics of the Chicago Fire, but there is one person who has been on the payroll of the Chicago Fire for the last decade plus of all of this losing, of all of this failing to make the playoffs, not competing, not having competent leadership. There has been one single person who has been involved in all of that. And that one single person is now your head coach. I'm gonna stop the rants there. I'm gonna remind everyone that, again, this is just a game. as much as we all love it and support it, and if you're fired till you die, God bless you. I hope this isn't bringing you closer to an early grave. I'm also going to take this time to remind everyone that Feed the Fire is sponsored by Skira Icelandic Spring Water. Icelandic for clear, Skira water comes from a spring in a government-protected nature preserve in Iceland with naturally low mineral content. This isn't your average water. Clearly, pun intended, it's one of the best. I wish I had a bottle of Skira right in front of me now to help me cool off after that just fired up rant there about this hiring. Again, it's even worse than the Heights and Pelzer news. Didn't get a recording from John Donovan. Instead, I just got a text from John when the Frank Klopas news was announced, and he just said, bombs away. And I don't know if he means just blow up the team or if the Chicago Fire world is going to be dropping bombs, but I think that about sums it up, John. Frank Klopas, next coach of the Chicago Fire again, bombs away. I'm going to remind everyone that we have MLS Cup coming up this weekend, Saturday, December 9th. Columbus Crew hosting LAFC, 3 o'clock here centrally on Apple TV, of course. The little box here also says it's free on Apple TV, so it's in front of the paywall maybe. Ooh, that's cool. Also on Fox and Fox Deportes, so make sure you check out where you can get your broadcast. I hope everyone enjoys it. I hope everyone is taking the news of Frank Klopas as head coach better than I am. Also, I would ask a small favor of everyone before you all go crazy again. Actually, go crazy. What do I care? I'm not going to tell you how to be a fan. But I will ask you all, share the podcast, share the show, like, subscribe, rate, review, follow along on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. It helps, obviously, with the internet algorithms and getting the show and getting the show more popular, spreading the word about the show, and again, growing the game, growing the popularity of the sport and the league through conversation. With that, I'll say it because I say it every week and I truly mean it. This week it hurts a little bit to say it, but let's go Fire.